So that's what the Bible
Believe it.
teaches. It teaches about the resurrection, and Jesus is the first fruits of the resurrection. And when we
Yes,
die, we'll be resurrected, but not reincarnated.
we're not reincarnated.
Reincarnated. It's Eastern religions. That's where it came from, and reincarnation is a man-made doctrine. And
Or is it doctrines of demons?
and doctrines of demons, who demons use men to write, just like God used men to write the Bible. Demons use men to write, non-biblical, secular writings, such as Socrates and Plato. What's his name? Plato and
It could be
Socrates
Plato. It depends on what side of the river you're from.
was used to teach this doctrine, and they believed in reincarnation. And who were they? They were philosophers. They're from Greece, Socrates, Plato, and they're part of the reincarnation movement.
In Mexican culture, when we have Halloween,
Yeah,
the next day is November 1st. So Catholics celebrate All Saints Day,
Saints
or is it
Day.
All Souls Day?
I think Saints Day, isn't it?
I think it's All Saints Day,
Yeah,
but and again, just being descriptive, not trying to be racial here.
yeah.
Mexicans celebrate a thing called Dia de los Dos
Mm,
Muertos. See?
it,
And so it's the Day of the Dead.
yeah.
And they have this whole thing of celebrating death.
Mm,
And so in the Bible, in just to take a step back here, we all have heard ghost stories, have we not?
yep.
There's some really cool ghost stories out there. There's stories about people. I heard some friends of mine that I used to have years ago. So my friend got together before the Vietnam War. They got married. They had other friends, and the husband got drafted, went in the army. And right before he left, they found out they were pregnant. And while he's gone serving his year tour in Vietnam, they have the baby, and they don't have a lot of money. And she takes black and white pictures of the baby and sends them to her husband in Vietnam.
Mm,
And one day she's sitting there in her chair by the crib. Baby was kind of fussing, and she's rocking. And all of a sudden, it's like in her dozing, the husband comes in the front door. And he walks up and looks down at the baby, looks at her, and vanishes.
wow.
It's like, whoa, he didn't feel right about that. She says he wasn't right because he had a sad look on his face.
Mm,
3 days later, knock at the door. There's the two army suits there. We regret to inform you, your husband was killed in battle.
wow.
About 3 weeks later, here comes his personal effects. The pictures she sent in black and white came back color.
Huh.
Little neat thing God maybe did for the guy, knowing the guy was going to die.
Yeah.
We'll get stories like that. There's one that I worked with a guy that he passed. He had a heart attack at work. I was there the morning and he had the heart attack.
Mm-hmm.
That was a Thursday, and they sent him to the hospital. And then Sunday he had a fatal heart attack.
Oh.
And one of the people he worked with was sitting in a chair because the guy worked shift work, and the guy was sitting in a chair, and the man, it was a girl sitting there that would work the night shift with this older man, and he came around the corner of the wall holding his coffee cup. She looked up and she became unglued because she saw the guy. The guy's nickname was Murph, and he winked at her like, "It's okay, kid," and just it scared the crap out of her. She jumped in the arms of the other guy that was working, the lead guy working the night shift, and he was like, oh, "What do I do?"
Wow.
Because she had seen Murph. She was freaked out.
Oh yeah.
So you have ghost stories like that. You've heard stuff like this.
Yeah.
There's someone we know right now who's dealing with the orbs in the garage. They're seeing orbs in the garage and got it on their video camera. But where does the Bible talk about ghosts? Well, what happened to the disciples? They're on the Sea of Galilee out there fishing, and they see Jesus coming to them. What's Jesus doing, Terry?
Walking on water. Yeah.
He's walking on water. And what does the Bible says? They were scared because they thought it was a
ghost.
And no cash for the ghost here, friends. They were freaked out, like, it's a ghost. Where else do we get ghosts? So one of the things that people do, if you've ever been to the large amusement parks in Southern California or Orlando run by the mouse,
Yeah.
They have the haunted mansion there.
Mm.
And one of the rooms that you go through is, in essence, a seance, where the original head was this woman. After about 30 or 40 years, they replaced her with her daughter, looked very similar. And they're talking, and there's tarot cards flown in the air. And we call for the spirits, come in. And then after you leave the seance room, the voiceover guy says, the friendly spirits have heard your stuff. And like, should you even go in that place to begin with?
Yeah.
But where do we have something like that in the Bible? And Terry,
The Old
it's
Testament.
in the Old Testament in the book of 1 Samuel 28. Now, before David is king, who was the king?
Saul.
King Saul.
King Saul.
And I think we've talked about this before in previous shows.
He was elected by the men.
You had 120 years of the national Israel before the lie of Palestine. You had 40 years of King Saul, 40 years of King David, 40 years of King Solomon.
Yeah.
But while Solomon was at king, he did not listen, obey God, and the Spirit of God left him. And Samuel anoints young David. Samuel dies. And this is where we bring up the story in the Old Testament book of 1 Samuel, chapter 28, starting at verse 3. And it says, now Samuel was dead, and all Israel had lamented him and buried him in Ramah, even in his own city. And Saul had put away those that had familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. So what was the penalty for practicing such stuff, Terry?
Death.
Death by how?
Stoning.
Stoning. They threw rocks at you. If you did bad things, they threw rocks at you. So it kind of helped keep people in line, because, you don't get hit by rocks. So it says Saul had done his job as king, is we have the president, or we have a governor or a mayor, is the chief, the executive officer, the chief. Saul had been doing his job. And 1 Samuel 24 says, the Philistines gathered themselves together and came and pitched in Shunem, and Saul gathered all Israel together, and they pitched in Gilboa. Some people believe that baseball is in the Bible mentioned here because they pitched.
Oh, man.
It's mean they set up their tents. There's your dad joke for today. And so Samuel 28:5 says, when Saul saw the host of the Philistines, he was afraid, and his heart greatly trembled. In essence, he was scared. And when Saul inquired of the Lord answered him not, neither by dreams, nor by Urim, nor by the prophets. And that's another thing to research, the Urim and the Thummim. Apparently the Jews had some device that, I use the word, they could divine God's favor or response. But Saul's like picking up the phone. God, what do I do? What do I do? Or sorry, God cannot be content. Quit talking to Saul. And Samuel, God was using to speak to Saul, he's dead. And now the phone line's been disconnected. It's the beauty as believers today. We have an open door to the throne of God all the time.
That's right.
There's times that God doesn't answer prayers. We mentioned that in a previous broadcast. But Saul's now quaking in his boots because he's not hearing anything. He's not getting anything. So now here's where this story goes downhill in a hurry. 1 Samuel 28:7. Then said Saul unto his servants, seek me a woman that has a familiar spirit, that I may go to her and inquire of her.
Yeah.
And without batting an eye, his servants said to him, behold, there is a woman that has a familiar spirit at Endor. We have today the internet. When we were kids, we had the phone book. You drive through certain parts of certain towns, and they'll have the palm reader or the tarot card person, and you know where they are.
Yeah.
The thing that always gets me is that sometimes you see those palm readers go out of business. Well, didn't they read their palms and know they were going to go out of business?
Should have known the future.
Saul's guys, they, without batting an eye, they know, hey, one of those ladies are over there in Endor.
Yeah.
So Saul disguised himself, goes over there, and he puts on other clothes. He takes off his kingly robes, and he puts on, the cloak.
Yeah.
Leave the boy and the Wookiee alone. You don't know who I am. And he went, and two men with him. And they came to the woman by night. Here we go. Nothing happens good at night, does it?
No.
No, Nicodemus came to Jesus by night because he didn't want to be seen.
He
So
was
the people
hiding.
wouldn't see him out there. He's hiding. And so Saul disguised himself, put on other clothes, him and the two men with him. They came to the woman by night, and he said, he probably disguised his voice too. He said, I pray thee, divine unto me by the familiar spirit, and bring me him up, whom I shall name unto thee. And she's like, okay, this is an easy buck. You know, she does this all the time. And the woman said unto him, says, hey, kind of like, you know, if you see the movies, the old speakeasies, or even today, I had a neighbor. I used to live in this place, and a guy a few houses down from me was dealing drugs.
Yeah.
And people were pulling up to the house, and they'd walk in the house and walk away with the paper bag, kind of like you see people who buy alcohol and they put in the paper bag. I'm rapidly buying, but and so there was a law enforcement guy who lived by the house, and he was law enforcement in a different county, and they told him to leave it alone. It's not your job. He said, I got a wife and kids. They live next door to this drug dealer and the people buying the drugs. They finally moved away, and they got busted when they moved to somewhere else. So you all know somebody like that. You know, you see what's going on. And so the woman now says, you know, hey, and you know, you can imagine that, you know, hey, Terry, you know, Saul's been cutting off those people they're dealing with familiar spirits and the wizards out of the land. Now, wherefore you lay a snare for my life to cause me to die? Because if I get caught, you know, I'm going to get stoned. And that's with the rocks, not with the drugs, man. And so she's concerned. She's like, she's still practicing. She knows she's breaking the law. She knows what she's doing is illegal.
Yeah.
Doesn't know it's Saul. And she's thinking, you know what? Hey, are you like, it's like undercover cops will go and buy alcohol for kids, or to go to the convenience stores and bust them for selling to underage people. So she's concerned. She's concerned. And now here's where Saul keeps adding nails to his coffin. 1 Samuel 28:10. And Saul sware to her by the Lord, saying, as the Lord lives, there shall no punishment happen to you for this thing. Okay, deal. Let's shake on it. Then said the woman, whom shall I bring up unto you? And he said, bring me up Samuel. All right. Do you think there are a lot of Samuels in the land that day?
Yeah.
Probably. There's just like a lot of Judases and
Joseph's,
Joshua's and Joseph and Mordecai's and
Mary's.
Mordecai. So there's all these games, but he says, bring me up Samuel.
Wow. So
now the woman starts doing her. Verse 12 says, and when the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. And the woman spoke to Saul, saying, why have you deceived me? Because now she knows who he is. I'm getting goosebumps to the back of my neck right now, folks. She says, why have you deceived me? For you are Saul. She's like, I'm a dead woman. She realized she's been trapped.
Yeah.
Is it Samuel? Or is it a demon sword portraying himself?
Yeah.
To be Samuel.
A counterfeit.
I think counterfeit. There you go. I think it's really Samuel, because she wouldn't have this Peter Pants moment if it's not the real deal. Samuel's come up, and here's now why I think it's Samuel. It says, the woman saw Samuel, she cried with a loud voice. The woman spoke to Saul, saying, you have deceived me. You are Saul. King says to her, you know, does he take off his mask, say, don't be afraid, for what do you see? And the woman said to Saul, I saw gods ascending out of the earth, little g gods. So demons are coming up. And she said to him, what form is he of? And she said, an old man comes up, and he's covered with a mantle. And Saul perceived that it was Samuel, and he stooped with his face to the ground and bowed himself. And now the Bible says, and Samuel said to Saul, doesn't say the demon portraying himself to be Saul. Doesn't see the familiar spirit who could make it. Said Samuel. Back up from the paradise side. Verse 28, 1 Samuel 28:15 says, and Samuel said to Saul, why have you disquieted me to bring me up? And Saul answered, I am sore distressed, for the Philistines make war against me, and God has departed from me and answers me no more, neither by prophets nor by dreams. Therefore I have called you, that you may make known unto me what I shall do.
Sad.
Here's the sadder verse right after that. Verse 16 says, then said Samuel, then why are you asking me? Seeing the Lord is departed from you, has become your enemy. Oh, kick in the shorts there, folks.
That's not good news.
That's not good news. So Samuel's telling Saul, you know what, like you're done.
Yeah.
And Samuel now, and the Lord has done to him as he spoke by me, for the Lord has rent the
Mm.
kingdom out of your hand. So in their
Torn
vernacular,
the kingdom.
let
Yeah.
me find a piece of paper that I can rent. I'm going to rent this one. All right. So in renting, it's not like today you're paying rent to live in an apartment or a house. Rent is like tearing, like what Superman does to his clothes to become Clark Kent.
Yeah.
But in this case, when they rent things, they rent things.
Was that
Rip, you know.
hope that wasn't a check.
Oh, it was. So they rent. He rent his clothes. He tore his clothes.
Mm.
Or correction,
Kingdom.
the kingdom. He has
Yeah.
torn the kingdom out of his hand. So he said, the Lord has rent the kingdom out of your hand and has given it to your neighbor, even to young David.
Wow.
Okay. Because remember, David was anointed later on by Samuel to be the true king.
Yeah.
Saul then had a familiar spirit, in essence, the demon pestering him. David had to play his harp to soothe the godly music would soothe Saul, but